friends. My name is attorney Christian Alvarez.
And I'm attorney Anais Salazar.
And today we're going to talk to you about the K-1 visa made for fiancés. First of all, we wanted to explain what the K-1 visa is for.
So the K-1 visa is available for fiancés of U.S. citizens. So if you recently became engaged or if you're planning to get married, a U.S. citizen can petition for their fiancé with the promise that they will get married here in the United States. The purpose of this visa is basically for a U.S. citizen to reunite with their fiancé. I don't know, most of you have probably heard about the 90-Day Fiancé show. So that show is based on the K-1 visa.
And so the 90-day fiancé, the reason why they say 90 days is because in order to obtain this visa, you have to promise the U.S. government or immigration officials in the State Department that you plan on getting married within the first 90 days of entering the country. So that's kind of why this show exists, right? Within 90 days, if you don't get married, you're supposed to go back to your country. Or if you get married outside of the 90 days, then perhaps the U.S. citizen could still petition for you, but they would have to petition for you all over again. So what documents do we need to start the first step in petitioning a fiancé that is living abroad?
Right, so the first step is to file this form, which is the application for the fiancé visa. The form is I-129F. And with this application, you have to prove a couple of things. One is that the petitioner is a U.S. citizen. So to prove that, we usually submit a copy of the U.S. citizen's passport or a certificate of naturalization if they naturalize here in the United States. We also have to prove that, that the U.S. citizen met the fiancé in person within the last 2 years. So some of the evidence that we submit to prove this is travel itineraries. If, let's say, the U.S. citizen went abroad to visit the fiancé, we usually submit, we can submit travel stamps as well on both passports if they travel to another country together. We also submit photos and an affidavit from both the fiancé and the U.S. citizen explaining that they have the intent to marry within the 90 days of entering, and explaining how they met and how the proposal happened.
Yeah, it's important to make sure that in this affidavit that you will each submit, that you give a little bit of background of how you met, why you decided to get married, who proposed, and of course include in there your promise to marry. And this information becomes relevant because immigration, although they don't require a lot of evidence, they do want to know that you have a real intention of marrying this person, that it is a good faith marriage, what they call a bona fide relationship, a good faith relationship, and that you really intend on coming here with the intention of reuniting with your U.S. citizen fiancé and getting married with them. So what happens after we submit this application?
So it usually takes about 4 to 5 months to receive a decision from USCIS. But after the K-1 visa is approved, then this approval is sent to NVC, which is the National Visa Center. And what they do is basically they prepare the case for the consulate.
Yeah, so once the case reaches the National Visa Center, they basically just send us an email, the attorneys, and as well as the clients, saying, you know, we have received from USCIS the approval notice for your I-129F. We are going to forward this directly to the consulate, and then the consulate will contact you about your interview. So in this stage, different from a regular spousal petition, the National Visa Center does very little work with fiancé visas. Basically, they just communicate that they've gotten the approval letter from USCIS. They're going to forward it to the consulate of your the beneficiary or your fiance's home country, the U.S. consulate there, and that they will in turn reach out to you with instructions on how to proceed. Most of the communication from consulates comes in form of email. Sometimes they send regular mail if you don't provide an email, but the reality is that once we send these applications, you should really be providing an email, because a lot of their communication is via email. What they do is they send a PDF with a large attachment that includes the instructions on what documents you need to be preparing for your interview date. Now, one thing I want to explain is that every consulate around the world is a little bit different. There aren't many consulates that are the exact same with their procedures. So we really need to be cognizant of what consulate we're working with and how they want their documentation to be sent to them. Most consulates, I'm going to be reading the list of documents that most consulates require. And then the little changes I will go ahead and explain, and what we've seen with other K-1 visas. So most consulates, what they want you to do is to go ahead and fill out the DS-160 form. This is for, and what I'm saying I'm talking about the foreigner. They want the foreigner to fill out a DS-160 form that has a questionnaire, like a biographical questionnaire of their last 5 years of addresses, the last 5 years of employment, as well as disclosing any social media accounts. Over the last year, they've been getting a little bit stricter with, looking at intending immigrants' social media accounts to see if they pose a risk to national security. So that questionnaire does take maybe a couple of hours to fill out. And that's something that your attorney will guide you on how to best fill it out and submit it. Another thing they do is that they require the applicants to obtain a medical exam. And the consulates have these designated doctors that each person is supposed to, or each applicant is supposed to reach out to and schedule their appointment. Another requirement is to submit a police clearance report. And this is typical for any sort of visa. What the government wants is to make sure that you don't have any outstanding criminal record, or that you have not been convicted of a serious crime that could impede the issuance of your visa. Another set of documents that they would want to see is from the petitioner, which is an affidavit of support. And here you also have to work closely with your attorney, because the affidavit of support is a promise from the petitioner to provide for the beneficiary any financial needs. And here, the government wants to see the taxes of the petitioner, as well as proof of current income, like pay stubs, their W-2s from the last year. And if the person isn't earning enough, you may need a co-sponsor. So the affidavit of support is very important that you work closely with your attorney, because they will guide you and they will let you know if the petitioner is earning enough or not. Another item that immigration has been looking for recently is proof that the person is going to obtain some sort of medical insurance or medical coverage when they get to the United States. That's something that you should also work with your attorney with. Finally, and this is the part that kind of varies between consulates, is having to take your fingerprints or a biometrics appointment, either at the time of your interview or before your interview. Some consulates require that you make a specific appointment before you go to your interview to take your fingerprints. Other consulates say that that's not necessary, and they'll just take your fingerprints at the time of your interview. So depending on what consulate you're working with, your attorney and the instructions given to you will also specify that information. So what type of questions, I guess this last step is really the most common question we get is, what will they ask me when I go to to my interview, right? So Anais, do you want to maybe start with some of the most common questions that we've seen?
Sure. So some of the most common questions that usually are asked at the consulate interview is, who is petitioning for you? What is their name? Where you will be living, or what's the address in the United States? What does your fiance do for a living? Like, where do they work? If your fiance has kids, the fiance meaning the U.S. citizen petitioner. How did you meet? Who proposed? Have you been to the United States before? And if so, how did you enter? What kind of visa you came with? have you been arrested? So this is important for the foreigner, the one that is seeking the K-1 visa. So this will come up in the police clearance report, but it is important that if you have had any arrests, that you discuss this with your attorney.
One thing we advise our clients to do is when we file the first step, which is the petition, remember at that time we send affidavits from both of you explaining how you met, how you fell in love, who proposed to who. That's at that stage you need to make sure you review those documents carefully and you're ready to answer. A lot of times we see that they're so nervous because they're so close to their interview that they're short on words, and we want to make sure that you go over this with your fiance, with your attorney. You feel comfortable articulating, of course, how you met in a very concise way, in a confident way, and that way when you're there, it doesn't matter how nervous you are, you're ready, right?
And these interviews are not like very long interviews where you feel like, you know, you're going to be like interrogated. I mean, they're going to ask you questions, but they're pretty like basic questions that you know the answer to. It's just putting your nerves away and just sort of like trying to answer the questions and not give them more information that they're asking for.
Yeah, they're supposed to be simple questions. The officers really don't have a lot of time. And to be honest with you, you're not going to be going in to a private room and you're not going to be interrogated for hours and hours on end. Most, I would say 99% of interviews are really around 5 minutes or less. And as long as you have all the documents on your checklist ready to go and you have not been here in the past and overstayed your visa in the past, or had a criminal record or a serious criminal issue, you will be fine. And in reality, once you're here, we're going to have to do it all over again. So once you get here, once you get through the fiancé visa and you get the visa in your passport, you get here, what happens next, Anais?
Once you enter the United States with the K-1 visa, the fiancé visa, you have 90 days from the day of entering to get married. So once you get married, then you will be eligible to apply for the adjustment of status, which is the green card. A lot of people ask us, well, you know, after I get married here in the United States and after I'm here with my K-1 visa, will I be able to work? And the answer is that yes, you will be able to work, because with the K-1 visa, it's a certain status that you are allowed to apply for a Social Security card. So you can go to the Social Security office and request a Social Security card, and with that card, you can present to your employer and work here in the United States.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a very good point that Anais is making. If you are on K-1, you can go the first day you arrive. You can go to the Social Security office, request your Social Security number, and you can work with a visa and that social while you wait for your green card process and your work permit to be processed. That's totally fine.
So after you get married and you come in with the K-1 visa, then like I mentioned before, you can apply for adjustment of status. So then you have to submit an application called the I-485. And you have to submit that application with evidence that you are in a bona fide marriage, which is a good faith marriage. So for this type of application, then you are required to submit much more evidence than the evidence that you were required to submit for the K-1 visa application. Why? Because immigration has, you know, they expect that after you're married that you will have more evidence together. So the evidence that we submit with this application is taxes. We file taxes together after getting married, then we submit those taxes. We also submit joint bills, any bills that are under both your names. This also includes a lease.
And one thing I want to add is a lot of young couples or a lot of couples that are going through this process from the very beginning, they say, well, you know, Attorney Alvarez, like, you know, what kind of evidence can we submit? We just got married. We don't have our taxes together. We don't have a lot of this stuff on the list. It's a little bit overwhelming to see this huge list of evidence, right? And the reality is that once we submit your green card application, which is the adjustment of status application, we don't really need a lot of evidence if you just got married. USCIS understands that. If you just got married yesterday, of course, you're not going to have a lot of joint documents. But knowing this list is very important. Why? Because by the time that you get your interview, immigration is going to say, okay, you have been married for 6 months, or you have already been married for a year. At this point, you should have at least filed 1 year of taxes. At least at this point, you should show us that you have a lease together, you have bills together, you have some sort of health insurance together, or anything else to show that you have a real and legitimate good faith marriage. So knowing this list is important because it really, you make sure that you are prepared for the interview. And Attorney Salazar, Ernest, and I we have seen this many times from people who are not our clients, who come to us and tell us, we were given a very hard time at the interview, and now they want to schedule us for another interview. And we didn't think we needed all this evidence because our marriage is real. I mean, but thinking that way is going to really get you in trouble, because the officers really care about the evidence, the financial documents that you have, not just a bank account with $100 in zero activity, but you have a bank account together where you're both paying your bills, your rent, your health insurance, your cell phone, you have it on a family plan. These are things that they look at, right? They process thousands of applications, and maybe some of them are not real, and they are trained in figuring out, what looks like, okay, this is a legitimate relationship, and what may be more questionable. And what really hurts us to see is when, yes, couples are 100% legitimate, but not on any sort of paper. They don't have bank accounts together. They don't have any bills together. And unless you have children together, right? And if you don't have children together, it's going to be very difficult to overcome that obstacle. And what happens is, at least in New York and New Jersey, they can give you a second interview, or they can simply deny the application. And we don't want you to have a green card denied, especially during these times where immigration has stated if your application for a green card, your adjustment of status gets denied, the officer can send you to court to removal proceedings, right? So it's important to have someone help you from the very beginning and make sure you document everything properly so that your case is smooth, flawless. You get an approval because you knew from day one everything they wanted to see. Once you get your green card, now, Attorney Salazar, do you want to explain a little bit about what happens once they get the green card, how long the green card will be?
Sure. So once we submit the application for the green card, then you are giving an interview. Once you appear at the interview, then you have to present more evidence than when you submitted with the initial application. So like Christian Alvarez mentioned, when you submit the initial application, we usually send out what documents that we can gather. But at the interview, since more time has passed, because usually it takes about 9 to 12 months for you to receive an interview date, then you will have more documents to present. So married for less than 2 years at the date of the interview, then you will receive the conditional permanent residence, and that's the green card for 2 years. So once you have the green card, you've had that green card for 2 years, then you have to apply to remove the conditions on the green card, which removing the conditions on the green card is basically applying for the 10-year green card. And that's another application, which is very similar to the I-485, which you will have to present more evidence that you're still married. Immigration will require more evidence because you will be married for a longer period of time at that point. So if you, let's say, didn't submit medical insurance in the initial application for the green card, then for the removal of conditions, you may have to submit that. You will have to submit taxes again, and whatever other evidence you have gathered. If you have children at that point, then you can submit the birth certificates of your children. So that's all we have for today on K-1 visas. If you have any questions or if you would like a consult with us, please reach out. You can give us a call at 646-453-7722, or you can go to our website, alvarezimmigration.com. We plan to post more videos in English about other areas of USCIS or of immigration that may be helpful to you. Please share this video if you found it helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. And yeah, we're happy that this is our first English video. We've been posting a lot of Spanish videos for the community because we saw that there was kind of a lack of videos, but we'll be making some English videos as well because they've been requested. And again, feel free to visit us at alvarezimmigration.com, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.